Today, one of the most notable aspects of the conflict in Ukraine remains the prevalence of FPV drones despite countermeasures adopted by both sides. In the case of Russia, tanks and combat vehicles continue to receive improvised armor and electronic countermeasures. Russian combat vehicles continue to fall to Ukrainian FPV drones and mines, solutions that have thus far proven insufficient against Ukrainian drones. In recent weeks, Russian land forces have experimented with various improvised armor solutions for their armored vehicles, significantly limiting their combat capabilities. Images and sequences captured on the battlefield have revealed tanks transformed into true steel turtles, armored vehicles that may offer better protection against drone attacks, but are severely limited in movement, as the adopted configurations considerably restrict turret movement and external visibility, nearly zeroing out the crew's situational awareness. Russian armored vehicles are also in the process of incorporating numerous passive solutions to minimize the effectiveness of Ukrainian FPV drones. This has resulted in several models of inhibitors and electronic countermeasures, systems increasingly common in Russian combat vehicles. Despite these innovations, mostly implemented on the ground, both Russian and Ukrainian armored forces have failed to address the threat posed by agile FPV drones, which have become a primary offensive and defensive tool on all combat fronts. The Ukrainian army even had to take drastic measures, withdrawing its M1A1 Abrams tanks from the front lines due to their vulnerability to drone attacks, compounded by the complex situation faced by defending forces due to shortages of ammunition, personnel, and adequate support. Faced with serious material limitations, Ukrainian ground forces have experienced a significant degradation in their ability to operate as a cohesive element of combined arms, restricted to offering static resistance as they relinquish various defensive lines. In the case of Russia, the invading forces maintain their advances despite significant material losses. However, the continuous adoption of countermeasures reflects the need to provide better protection to personnel and armored assets to reduce losses. Although the Russian industrial complex has adapted to the rhythms of an ongoing conflict and the belief that Russian forces can absorb the mentioned losses, combat vehicle stocks are not unlimited, and replenishing losses becomes increasingly costly. In front lines, Russians suffering considerable losses in their offensives, Russian forces prevail due to the inexorable weight of their human and material resources. Nevertheless, the ever-present threat of drone attacks remains an unresolved issue, a situation acknowledged by all actors closely monitoring the developments in the Ukrainian conflict. Meanwhile, Russia's tally of personnel and equipment losses is closing in on 4 significant markers, showing the extent of the cost of Moscow's full invasion of Ukraine on its own forces, according to Kyiv's latest figures. Ukraine's defense ministry said on Saturday that over the previous day, Russia had lost 12 tanks, which takes the total over the course of the war to 7,366. Only 134 shy of 7,500. Ukraine also said it had taken out 31 unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, putting the total number of destroyed drones at 9,611, only 389 short of the 10,000 mark. While Moscow's forces also lost another 27 armored fighting vehicles on Friday for a total of 14,156, less than 900 away from the 15,000 mark. Russian troop losses continue to mount up, with Kyiv's estimate of 1,260 casualties for Friday being the 7th consecutive day this figure had topped 1,000. That includes both those who are killed and injured, and Kyiv says its estimate of both personnel and equipment losses are very approximate and do not claim to be particularly accurate. Getting an accurate figure of Russian troop losses is difficult, but French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné said in an interview released on Friday that Paris estimates Russian casualties were 500,000, 150,000 of whom had been killed. Russia has not updated its tally of losses since September 2022, when Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said was just under 6,000, while Kyiv is often tight-lipped about its losses. Although in a rare admission, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in February that 31,000 of his troops had been killed. However, Shoigu said on Friday that Ukraine's troop losses had surpassed 111,000, as he claimed that Russian forces continue breaking the enemy's system of strongholds along the entire line of contact. Russia's defense ministry said it has recently captured settlements around the town of Avdiivka, in the Donetsk Oblast, which was seized in February. Shoigu announced the capture of 211 square miles of territory so far this year, and this was higher than the figure of 155 square miles he had announced in April. The Institute for the Study of War estimates Russia controls around 1/5 of Ukrainian territory, or more than 38,000 square miles. The think tank has predicted that Russia will conduct a major offensive in the coming weeks as it seeks to capitalize on Ukraine's lack of ammunition. While Ukraine, it eagerly awaits the delivery of U.S. military aid following a $61 billion package passed by U.S. Congress. However, Russia has threatened to strike British military facilities and said it will hold drills simulating the use of battlefield nuclear weapons in response to UK weapons being used by Ukraine to strike its territory. British Ambassador Nigel Casey was called to the Foreign Ministry in Moscow for a formal protest following Foreign Secretary David Cameron's comments last week that Ukraine had the right to use British weapons to strike Russia. Mr. Casey was warned that in response to Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory with British weapons, any British military facilities and equipment on the territory of Ukraine and abroad could be targeted, the ministry said, calling Lord Cameron's remarks a serious escalation. It is the first time Russia has publicly announced drills involving tactical nuclear weapons, and tactical nuclear weapons include air bombs, warheads for short-range missiles and artillery munitions, and are meant for use on a battlefield.